Believe in LA Football Podcast.
Touchdown Rams!
Touchdown UCLA!
Recovered by the Chargers.
The Trojans back in front.
With your hosts, the Coach and the Don, part of the Believe Podcast Network, LA's #1 sports podcast network.
What's up, delegates, and welcome back to the Believe in LA Football Podcast with your host, the Coach and the Don. We are Los Angeles' #1 sports podcast network, the only place with a show for every team in LA and more. We believe in our LA teams. Do you believe? The show is also brought to you by SportsElDente.com, your recipe for LA sports. Make sure to check out SportsElDente.com. Use the promo code The Coach and the Don. Get 10% off any of those subscription packages. Coach, how are you doing?
I am doing just fine, my friend. How are you doing?
Doing great. I want to quickly touch on our new sign-on. If you've noticed in the past, used to say, what's up, Diatribe? If you've been on SportsElDente.com, that's kind of our moniker we've used of joining our site and joining our community. Kind of called it the Diatribe. One, it was a fun play on words. It kind of flowed with Al Dente Diatribe. But we did, looking into the meaning of the word, it was originally coined from, Roman times. It means to lecture or to sermon. So since we tell sports stories, that was kind of the thought behind it, like join our team of storytellers. But in more modern times, the word has, I guess, changed form, if you will, as a lot of words do throughout history. And now it has more of a meaning of kind of verbal abuse or boisterous, argumentative language. So didn't really want to be associated with that, so we changed up. Figured delegates, also a fun word to say, also flows well with Al Dente. But also it's more about not just joining, but actually becoming a part of our community. Because if you're a delegate, you are with the movement. So there's the reason behind that. I like it, though.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, you thought of it, so touche.
No, we both had a pretty big hand in that. I like it, though. I think it's going to catch on fairly quick. It's going to be like a wildfire, and, out here, how fast this can spread.
That's right. We'll have shirts made, the delegation room, and we'll have a bunch of different stuff, so it'll be cool.
Yeah.
Well, we have a great show for you today on the LA Football Podcast. Going to do a couple different things. I know we cover football, but we are going to at least briefly chit-chat about March Madness, as it was a great Elite Eight weekend. Coach was there for a couple games, or a game. He was there, last week for 2 games, so you've been, at 3 total?
Yeah, 3 total. I saw the Sweet 16 games for the West region, which neither one were that good.
Yeah.
But the Elite Eight game was awesome.
Bonkers.
And we can dive into that here in a little bit.
We'll get to that. We'll chat just a few. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the AAF, which some wild news broke today on that. Probably going to be a documentary one day, maybe an Al Dente documentary. Maybe that'll be our first one that the Coach and the Don are really breaking down. And finally, we're going to continue with our short, quick series of our LA football brackets, and we're going to do our pro brackets. So kind of face off the greatest Chargers and Rams teams of all time and do it bracket style to get our ultimate LA pro team. But first, let's talk some March Madness, my friend. So I'm going to start and just lead off by saying my bracket is absolute doo-doo butter. Just bad. Just totally bad. I had Gonzaga as my winner. I'll point out some key misses, and then you can maybe get to yours, and then we'll talk about maybe some of the games you went to. So first I'm going to start with Cincinnati, because this is a team that frustrates me every single year. So I'll start back. I'm going to go back a ways, maybe 8 years. What am I, 28? So I was 21, so 7 years or so. I was in Vegas. We went to Vegas for March Madness for the opening weekend, which is like the funnest weekend to be in Vegas because there's so many games. You can go bet on them, hang out in the sports book. And so I can't remember who they played, but I picked Cincinnati. I never followed them or anything. I picked them randomly, put like $50 on them, and won like 600 or something like that. So ever since then, I've had a little love affair with the Cincinnati Bearcats. So every year I pick them to go decently far, and every year they're a good squad. It's not like they're just some like randomly put together team. This was one of their lesser years as a 7 seed, but they're usually always around that 4, 5, 6 seed. So I was like, you know what, I'll put them in like the Sweet 16, Elite 8 maybe. Every year they lose in the first or second round. So yet again this year I had them in the Elite 8. Lovely. Good for me. Lost in the first round. So next year I've already vowed I'm not going to choose them, and I guarantee they go to like the Final Four next year.
Probably, yeah. The one year you don't pick them to go very far, they're gonna cut down the nets.
Yeah, my heart that's already broken, they're gonna pick those broken pieces up and then just stomp on them.
Yep, they're gonna just sliver them into even tinier shards.
Yeah, so that was a miss. I had Iowa State going to the Final Four. I was hoping they'd ride that wave of winning the Big 12. That didn't happen. Obviously, I had Gonzaga as my winner, and then just misses here and there. Those are probably my two big ones, were the Cincy and the Iowa State. I had Villanova going a little farther than most, I think, as well. I just think, Jay Wright? That's the name of their coach, right?
For Nova, yeah.
Yeah, those suits are just too fine. He can't leave the tournament early. So I was like, he's got to be there at least in the Elite 8. Nope.
Nova to me seems like one of those teams they're kind of like a UConn. I mean, not much lately, but they're either going to go all the way and they're a favorite, or they're going to get like a 7-8 seed and have a second round next. Like they're one way or the other. They're either really good or they're just kind of mediocre.
Yeah. So that was there's my bracket. So out of the Final Four that are left, I have Virginia. I had Duke, Gonzaga, Virginia, and Iowa State. So.
Well, you're doing better than me in the Final Four department.
Yeah.
Not one of my Final Four teams made it. I was doing okay. It was respectable. My East bracket was almost perfect, except for I had Maryland in the Sweet 16, which they didn't make it. My West bracket, my biggest thing, I had Buffalo upsetting Texas Tech in the second round, which clearly that didn't happen.
Wow. Yeah.
And I had Nevada upsetting Michigan, which Nevada didn't even make it out of the first round.
Yep, I had Nevada also.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. Tennessee, they let me down. Of course, North Carolina. But my Final Four was Duke, Florida State, Tennessee, and North Carolina. So it's bombed. I've maxed out.
Yeah. Well, there's always next March, right? So I think in our
there's always next March.
Yeah, I'm in a two pools. One of them had 84 people, and right now currently I'm in 81st, so that's bad. It's not good. And the other one is actually on the Believe Podcast Network. There's like over 300 people. I haven't even looked, because I'm probably like 298 out of 300. So I don't even want to see what that one is, but not good.
Hey, but it could be worse.
I'm not in last. I'm not
by
last.
much, but it could be worse.
Yeah. Yeah, the person who's in last in the one we're in together with the 84 people, picked Marquette to win it all.
Of course it did.
So I'm not them.
Yeah, and this was a weird year for me, because normally I just go bonkers and have like 20 brackets, and I just pick all different ones. So but I only did like 2 this year.
So okay, that's a good question actually. So when you do a bunch of brackets, or even say this year 2 brackets, we'll go off of this year, because I did 2 brackets as well. Did you do both brackets exactly the same, or did you do them both completely different?
They weren't exactly the same, but the majority of them were, like, I think Elite 8, Sweet 16, all that stuff was the same. But there was a couple like round 1 and 2 games where I picked a different winner. But typically, if I fill out a lot of brackets, I'll do the ones I care about, like I'm paying for. I'll actually like sit down and really think about it, and those will be the same. If I pay for a bracket, those are normally going to be the same. But if like on ESPN, if I just fill out bracket after bracket after bracket, I'll just do some crazy shit and just like pick all 16 seeds, make it fun. But,
yeah. See, that's what I need to, I think, change in my bracketology is every year I do multiple brackets, and every year I have them the exact same, because I get that stupid cocky attitude that's like, this is going to be the bracket. So I can't have 3 different ones in my one that won it all when I could have won 3. So I always do the exact same, and then every year I've won once, but every year it's usually like this, where all 3 are just trash. So I think I need to, you need to give yourself better odds. Hedge your bets a little bit. Bet against the grain, and I think just having it all the same, it never works out the way you want it to. It doesn't seem like.
Well, no, because you pick one game goes wrong and all your brackets are busted,
Yep.
and you don't have anything else to look forward to. So yeah, it's not the best strategy in the world.
I'm going to change that up. That's why we're not we're not a college basketball podcast. We know a little bit more about football, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
I was, it was a busy year this year. No excuse, but we were deep in football, period. College pro football. So I didn't really watch probably the least amount of college basketball I've ever watched that I can remember. So this was a tough bracket to fill out because I was literally being one of those basically non-sports fans, I felt, just looking at the seed number and the name and being like, yeah, these guys are good usually. Let's move them on.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I usually watch a ton of college basketball. I'm a huge fan of the Kansas Jayhawks. So and this year I usually watch every single game, but I didn't watch a lot of them even this year. But when it came time for conference tournaments, I tried to watch a lot of that just to get some sort of idea what these teams look like.
Yeah.
That way I wasn't going in completely blind. But yeah, I had a lot less information this year than I normally do. So yeah, it was definitely a down year for me.
Yeah. Well, that being said, based on our knowledge of the 4 teams left, who you got taking it?
Boy, I like all of them. I wouldn't be upset with any of them. I think they all have pretty cool stories. But me personally, just being a Kansas fan and being originally from Big 12 country, I got to go Texas Tech. And I saw them play in person. I think I would not be surprised if they legitimately do it. They play lockdown defense. They never seem like they're out of place. Always seem like they're in the game. And they have a couple of really streaky shooters. Jarrett Culver, who's the Big 12 Player of the Year. He's a very dangerous player. He's a guard combo guy. But he seems, the games I saw him live, he kind of started slow, and like the other guys were. But you didn't feel like he ever had to do stuff. Mm-hmm. But when it came time, or when his team really needed him, he would step up, and it seemed like in a matter of just a couple minutes he went from like 7 points and all of a sudden he has 20. It's like he's one of those guys where he doesn't score all the time, but when you need him, he's there. Mm-hmm. So I really liked watching him play. And then they I'm gonna butcher his name, Davide Moretti, I think is his name. Yeah. He's from Italy, and he's got a 3-point shot on him, and
his family was there, right? Didn't they like fly his family?
Yeah. Chris Beard flew his family, and that was a pretty cool story. Yeah, he's a fun guy to watch too. He can drive the ball, and then Matt Mooney. He's Matt Mooney, one of the guys I went to the game with. We were kind of joking around, but Matt Mooney, who plays for Tech, he's either gonna. He's a really high risk, really high reward guy. Okay. He's going to drive the ball, and he may make a terrible play. He may throw up this, prayer of a shot, or just make a really idiot pass, or jump, make a move without having any idea what he's going to do. And you're sitting there scratching your head, thinking, why is this guy on the floor? And then the next play, he makes this unbelievable drive, and under the basket. He's a really cool player to watch because. He's not afraid to make a mistake because it's not going to get to him. Mm-hmm. He can make 2 mistakes in a row, and then he'll make 4 plays in a row for you. So I like Texas Tech. I like the combo players they have, and they're a fun team to watch.
Yeah. Mooney reminds me of like a J.R. Smith, where sometimes you're just absolutely pulling your hair out because you're like, why are you shooting? You just missed 3 threes in a row, and you're going to take a 4th one. Okay. Where he just doesn't have that fear. He's like, I'm just going to keep shooting until it goes in, and sometimes it drives you crazy, but hey, they're in the Final Four, so it's worked a little bit. I remember talking to you probably mid-season, kind of just asking you, fill me in, how's Kansas doing? And I remember you saying, like, Tech was the best team in the Big 12, and it blew me away because I'm like, when was the last time Texas Tech had a good basketball team? And here they are in the Final Four. So that's a fun story. Cool you got to see him. I watched the game, obviously. Well, I've watched a lot of these games, but I watched it more so because I had Gonzaga winning the whole thing, so I was obviously bummed with the result, but it was a very good game. And the way Texas Tech played, I would have no doubt them going on to win it. Michigan State, obviously, they're tough to bet against, taking down Duke, Tom Izzo, just the pedigree they have there. Virginia, lockdown defense, they're kind of redemption from last year, losing that 16 seed. And we talked pre-show, they almost lost again in the first round, and since that first game, they've looked pretty solid since then. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why I'm blanking right now. Who's the 4th team?
Auburn,
thank you. And Auburn's like the surprise, another surprise, like, but not a surprise that they've like don't deserve to be there. A surprise because they've like blown every team out that they've played to be there. Like they have looked dominant on their on their road to the Final Four. So I don't know, man. If I were to bet money, I'd probably bet Michigan State just because the pedigree. If I were to root for someone, probably Tech, like you said.
Yeah, and what's crazy about Auburn is they almost lost to New Mexico State in the first round.
Yeah, I picked Mexico State in the first round. But since that game, they've dominated.
Yeah, so it's almost like that was a huge wake-up call because they came out and completely just shellacked Kansas.
Yeah.
That was embarrassing to watch, even for me, not even really being a part of the team, just being a fan. But yeah, and then they came out and completely owned North Carolina, and then the way they came back and they started off really slow against Kentucky, and just they showed their grit. And Bruce Pearl, it's hard to root against that guy.
I know.
He's such a fun character on the sideline, and love his interviews. And you can tell he cares about his players. That's really huge for me.
Yeah.
Of course, that one of their top guys went down with that injury against North Carolina, which was tough to watch, and torn ACL and stuff. So they got a little extra motivation there. So yeah, it's kind of hard to root against any of these teams because they all have something to root for. But yeah, man, this is the best Final Four that I can remember.
Yeah, I like it too. A lot of good storylines and no, like, just a head scratcher of who's there, which makes it that much more fun. Real quick, and then we'll move on to AAF. But that Auburn-Kentucky game was so fun just to watch the coaching going on. Just Calipari and Bruce Pearl, excuse me. You would see, like, the camera angle, obviously, in basketball, like, follows the ball. And you see both coaches out of the corner of your eye, both of them basically all the way on the court, like, completely against the rules, all the way on the court, all pointing, shouting, you go here, run this play, do this. And they're literally on the court, but to each other, they're probably, like, 10 feet apart. It was hilarious, and it was all game. Refs constantly were like, get back, get back. It was great. So that you just the emotion, the energy, that how much they care for their players. I know there's mixed emotions about Calipari. I happen to be, I wouldn't say a fan, but I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's a good coach. So, yeah, it was fun to watch.
Yeah, and the fact that, the game I saw, Tech and Gonzaga, I thought that was going to be the best game of the weekend. And then I think after it's all said and done, I think that may have been the worst game of the weekend. Not that it was a bad game by any stretch of the imagination, but just the caliber of games we saw between the other 6 teams. The Duke Michigan State game was a 1-point game, and then Virginia Purdue, and then Auburn Kentucky. Those two went to overtime. It's like that you can't ask. This is the greatest weekend in college basketball history. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And my last point, I just think it's kind of cool. I didn't know this stat going in. I saw it somewhere on Twitter or Instagram or something. But this is the first time in a long time, maybe, but either. It's the 4th time ever or the 5th time ever that a Final Four has not had UCLA, Kentucky, Duke, North Carolina, or Kansas.
So out of those 5 teams, wow.
Out of those 5 teams, at least one of them have made it every single time other than 4 years. This is the 4th time it's ever happened in the history of the tournament.
That's a crazy stat.
Yeah, when you think of the Blue Bloods, those are the teams.
Yeah, that's crazy. I wonder if Michigan State didn't make it, if that number would be even more. I feel like
Say that again?
I wonder if Michigan State didn't make it, if that number would be even like fewer. So 4th time ever without those 5 teams. If you add Michigan State, I wonder if it'd be like.
Okay.
I wonder if it'd be like first time ever without those 6 teams. Like, because I feel like Michigan State's like the other one. It's like the premier program.
Yeah, I think they've been to 10 total. I think so. Yeah, I'm sure you're right. But it's pretty crazy. So it's been a great year for college basketball.
Yeah. Speaking of UCLA, come on, get together. They've not been good for quite some time.
Yeah, they Lonzo Ball, when was he? What was his year? 15?
Yeah, but they lost in like the second round of the tournament. They were like meh.
Yeah. They kind of disappointed that year, that's right.
And then before that they were bad, and after that they've been bad, so we'll see. Luke Walton will probably be the coach next year, and we'll see how they do from there.
Those mid-2000 teams were the last really good ones.
Yeah, go back to like Jordan Farmar and those guys.
Russ Westbrook.
Yeah, Westbrook. Yeah, I always forget Westbrook was a Bruin. I don't know why.
Yep.
All right, well, let's move on to the AAF, the Alliance of American Football. For those of you that haven't heard, it was announced today being Tuesday, that the league is indefinitely suspending all football operations. Reports saying that, so as of Tuesday, all player salary, everything is cut off, and as of Wednesday, rest of personnel will be cut off. So at the time of this recording, it is not officially folded, but it's pretty much done. There's 2 weeks left in the season. There is still going to be, obviously, playoffs and a championship, so the timing is obviously strange. Tom Dundon, who bought into the league 2 weeks in with a $270 million investment, which made him kind of sole chairman of the board, if you will. He had all unilateral power. Essentially made the decision, didn't have to consult with anyone because of the way his intermittence was written as he came in with the investment. So it was his call. He basically lit $70 million on fire and is walking away. There's tons of storylines. We'll get into a couple of them. Talon, what's your first reaction? I know I texted you this morning. I don't even know if you had seen it before I texted you, but I was shocked when I heard it. I don't know what your initial reaction was.
No, yeah, definitely surprised. Yeah, your text was the first I'd heard of it, so of course I was sitting at my desk and I had to Google it. What was going on?
The old Googs.
Yeah. Thank God for Google. What did we do before that? But man, it's surprising because I felt like it started off with some good steam at least, and I know I watched the first 2 or 3 weeks of it, and I'll full disclosure, I really haven't seen it since week 3 or 4. Mm-hmm. But yes, I am surprised, but really, if you think about it, they're not. It doesn't sound like they're folding due to a lack of interest or anything like that. It sounds like there's some behind the scenes stuff going on. I'm sure there's going to be so much more stuff that comes to light in the coming days and coming weeks. But for this Dundon, whatever his name is, for him to just pull all that money, it pretty much seals the deal unless they can find somebody else to invest. But I don't know. And my thought is, why do people? I know you don't want to go head to head with the NFL, but spring football, man, just doesn't work. It just doesn't seem to work. There's always something that comes up, and people. They watch the NFL and they're hardcore into it, and then the Super Bowl happens, and I guess after the Super Bowl, they're not interested, and then they look forward to the draft, and they just don't want to watch any more games of football. I don't know. I can't explain it. I'm the same way. Like I said, I was interested just to see what it would be like, and it was fun to watch. There's nothing wrong with the game. The product was great. The rules and the reviews, they were doing some cool, innovative stuff, and how they streamed it live on their site all the time. It was a cool league, but yeah, I don't know, man. It just unfortunately there's some stuff going on. I know there's some conspiracy theories going on, but I'll be really eager to see what's the real deal.
Yeah. So there's a few things I want to get to. So first, I want to talk about why the league, or kind of what is happening right now, which no one really knows. I feel like so many layers of the onion to peel back. Then I want to talk about, and we can go back and forth, why it got to this point, and then I want to wrap up with saying, what do future leagues, i.e. the XFL, need to do to prevent something like this happening? So first, what's happening right now, or what's at least being kind of creative narratively behind the scenes, is that there's a couple different stories. One, right into the season, so 2 weeks in, the league was essentially bankrupt. Checks were being put on hold for players. They kind of came out and said that they were changing payroll systems. That's why there was a delay, kind of to cover up. Again, this is what I've read on different websites and sources. I don't have any personal sources, so this is just what hearsay I've heard. So there's that aspect where they were basically telling the public that they were financially stable for 3 years. They came out before and said, we have a 3-year plan. We could not make a dime and we're good for 3 years. That was what they were telling the players. That's what Steve Spurrier came out and said that he was told. So that's what they were kind of building. We have 3 years to build this thing because we're good financially. Then all of a sudden, 2 weeks in, Carolina Hurricanes owner Tom Dundon comes in and invests $270 million. And so then the league comes out again saying, "Oh, now we're good. Like we got the investment we need." So then, if you're really the critical thinkers, are like, "What do you mean now you're good? You said you were good for 3 years, and then you need someone to come in." So then there's that little onion layer. It's like, okay, something's not going right here. They're not telling us the figures aren't right. Then there's Tom Dundon's investment was going towards actual player and coaches' salaries, but it wasn't going towards vendor pay. So by vendor pay, I'm assuming that means, stadium employees, stuff like that, and other aspects of it. So then there's other people on the hook that apparently haven't been getting paid, or at least haven't been paying correctly, or stuff was on hold. So that's another layer of the onion. Then there's these stories that so do you know, I know we kind of mentioned pre-show, do you know about the gambling app, the AAF app?
I didn't until the story broke. I know almost nothing about it.
Okay.
I saw Albert Breer text about it or tweet about it.
Yeah. So the gambling app, and this is actually a extremely innovative, and this is what I think was going to keep the league going where it's at because of how big sports gambling is, fantasy football. So within their app, it's like the NFL app. It's not some third-party app. It is the AAF app. You can actually gamble on every single play. So live game, if it's 3rd and 10, you can bet if it's going to be a running play, if it's going to be a passing play, dive play. They have all these different setups. So literally live gambling during live games. So that was like a new technology feature that now there's this conspiracy that Tom Dundon just wanted to get in to get this technology, cut his losses at $70 million, which is pretty expensive when people can develop these kind of apps for, I would think cheaper than that. But there's obviously legal and hoops, and they probably had some sort of copyright thing that maybe he was trying to get his hands on. Who knows? So it goes into, then there's that theory that, okay, he was going to do that, cut his losses at $70 million, he can get a big tax break, and in reality, he doesn't lose that much. So there's that conspiracy theory. And then there's just the straight up, they wanted to join with the NFLPA to be an actual developmental league. The original, if you want to call them owners or starters, Bill Polian and Charlie Ebersol, their plan was within 3 years. They said they were having talks. Talks were going well, just nothing was happening right yet, but they weren't worried about it. Tom Dundon comes in and says, no, I want this to happen now. They apparently talked this week. Talks went okay, but nothing was happening, and he essentially said, okay, if it's not happening now, I'm pulling the plug. I don't know. A lot out there. I think it's going to take a while till the truth actually comes out, but it's an interesting story, a fascinating story, and just a lot of kind of just shady stuff, I think, going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely doesn't seem all up on the up and up for sure. Especially just how out of the blue it seemed to be. Like this guy just all of a sudden, and I mean, I don't really understand the whole NFLPA not wanting it to be like an official developmental league, and that just pissed him off so much. I mean, I don't see that as being a legitimate reason why you would want to pull out of something like that. But again, I'm not, my mind just isn't.
Yeah. So the reasoning why they wanted that to be because I think it was Ebersol that actually came out and said, whether we are ever contracted with the NFL, that's what this is. This is a developmental league. Like that was their plan all along. But the reason why Dundon wanted the actual contractual is because they wanted to be able to get young talent and young players. Because in reality, when you think about it right now, the product's been good, but it's basically, no offense,
washed up.
It's recycled players, essentially.
Yeah.
Which the NFL didn't make it, so they go to the AF. Whereas they wanted to be able to get young guys that were maybe going to be 6th, 7th, walk-on undrafted free agents that would be practice squad guys in the NFL to come play in the AF because that talent would be higher. It would develop them quicker. But then with contracts, it's a whole mess because then you have higher chance for injury. If you're a practice squad guy in the NFL, you're making $500K, and then you could go play in the AFF, make $70K, get hurt on the first play, and then you lose out on that money. So the NFLPA doesn't want to be on the hook for that. So, there's a lot of moving parts. You can see both sides, but it's strange that he just, like that, decided, okay, never mind, like, we'll just fold then.
Yeah.
I'm over it. We'll just fold.
And I don't know all the legalities of it, but someone could still come in and take over that investment, right? They see it's a somewhat successful league. It's got somewhat of a following. It's sustainable. It seems that way in a way. If you want to invest in it, it seems like it's not a bad investment. Do you think like a I don't know, Michael Jordan or a Magic Johnson, or I don't know if Peyton Manning has that kind of money to invest in something like that. But I mean, is there anybody out there that could come in and kind of save it and keep this thing going for the next 2-3 weeks?
Oh, someone could for sure. There could be a savior, but I think, unfortunately, and this is, I think, what if I'm Bill Polian and Charlie Ebersol, and I'm sure they are, why I would be irate is this could have happened behind closed doors, or at least, and maybe there was an attempt, because now it's just completely severed the league. Like, it's basically dead. Whether it's officially folded or not, even if Ryan the Don Dyer had $300 million, and I went to them and said, hey, what's it cost to finish the league year? And they said $20 million. And I said, okay, what's it costing to get our off-season program going and actually like saving face? And they said $100 million. I was like, cool. Here's $200 million. Let's make it happen. Because of what happened just today and the way it severed ties, I just think it's too late, unfortunately. I don't know if they can save face. Maybe they could.
So when you say sever ties, but I mean, it's to me again. I'm there's so much more to figure out, but to me, it seems like Dundon is the only tie that's severed. I mean, nobody else. I mean, what else is severed?
So,
and I'm legitimately asking.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's a good question. What I think is it's more severed with fans, not with sponsors, not with players. Because I mean, yes, they didn't practice today because they suspended activities, but it's one day of practice. But if I'm a casual fan and I hear all this going on today, and then all of a sudden in 2 weeks it's like, oh, we're back, we have a game. I'm like, all right, I thought this was over. Like I'm not dying to get back into it. If I'm a diehard fan, yeah, I'll be back no matter what. But for the casual fan, which was what 80% of the fanhead was, they lost them now. I mean, in today's society where it's everyone has like the mind of a mouse that just is constantly doing different things, they had to keep that sustainability for as long as possible. And now with this little implosion, I think it's lost. Some people on to the next thing.
And I might be playing a bit of devil's advocate here, but do you think? I mean, definitely the world we live in, it seems like everybody's just drawn to drama, and this has drama written all over it.
Yeah.
So do you think that if someone else were to come in, especially a polarizing figure, a brand new owner like a Magic Johnson or something,
yeah,
do you think people would be like, I want to see what happens here. I want to see how this all plays out. And do you think this, as negative as it is at this moment, could somehow even pique people's interest to come watch and be like, man, like I didn't even know what the AAF was, and now it's like everybody's reading these stories about all these conspiracy theories. It seems like there's almost more interest in it now than it was when it first started. So do you think it could somehow even boost their stock at all?
That's a very good point, and especially in 2019 when the Kardashians and reality TV is at such a premium. That's a good way to look at it. I mean, maybe if they are able to get a pool of ex-players, which I want to get to that in a minute too, that can come in and kind of save it financially, they might actually be able to get more people to say, oh, wow, this is like literally a soap opera. Like, I want to pay attention. Like, I don't even care now about the actual football. Like, I'm going to follow on social media. I'm going to do the betting on the app because now I know what that is. A lot of people probably didn't know. Now I do. So maybe, I mean, who knows? Maybe it could. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, and to me personally, I don't think the story's over. I think it's far from over. Rather it be if the league never does play again. But I think the news, or we're going to find out what really happened at some point. Yeah, I don't know. I'm eager to see how this plays out. So my interest is kind of piqued.
I know. Well, and the strangest thing to me is the actual execs and founders behind it. Like, not even talking about Dundon since he came in late with just money, but all the people before that just are too smart to me to have this thing fold 8 weeks in. Like, the league started, literally like 8 weeks ago. And to not even make it a full season, something fishy definitely happened because they were too smart. They had too much prep. You have all the history of USFL, XFL, USL, all these different leagues that tried and failed. You have all their basically blueprints of what not to do, and they essentially did it. I'm like, something happened because they're just too many smart people to have this big of a mess up. And I think you're right. The story's not done.
Yeah, and
it's just real quick before you say it's a shame. It's a shame that this all came out today on April 2nd because it would have been the most glorious April Fool's joke ever if it came out on Monday. They're a
It's
day
funny.
late.
It's funny you bring that up because I was actually thinking that. But that's funny.
Yeah.
It would have been like, talk about a marketing ploy.
Oh,
Like,
the most
that's huge.
elaborate April Fool's joke ever.
Yeah,
But
but unfortunately, doesn't appear to be that way.
apparently, I think it's real.
But yeah, to kind of go off what you were saying, man, like, yeah, there just seem to be so many good football minds involved in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Polian, Steve Spurrier, Ebersol. I mean, his dad Dick was a big wig with sports and football, and
Yeah,
it
NBC.
just seemed. I mean, one of the biggest pro wrestling fans out there, but the original XFL, we'll see what it looks like next year. But the original XFL was pure garbage because they didn't have the right people in charge. Vince McMahon doesn't know football.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's leading it again, but he's a guy that learned from his mistakes. So we'll see. I'm cautiously optimistic about the new XFL, but
Yeah. Well, he actually hired like a commissioner that knows football, so that helps.
yeah.
This go around.
But yeah, I agree with you. It is kind of surprising that 7 weeks in, 8 weeks in, whatever, with so many football-minded people, and Troy Polamalu is involved in it, correct? And all these people. Yeah, it is surprising that it. I mean, it seems like it's a financial thing. If you don't have the money to do it, you don't have the money to do it.
Yeah.
No matter how your football IQ is or how much you know about football, but. You and I know a lot about football, but we don't have the money to go start a league. You know what I mean? So, I mean, if it's strictly a fiscal thing, unfortunately, yeah, if you don't have the money, that sucks.
Yeah, and that's the other thing that's just anyone that starts a business, especially one that requires that much financial backing to just operate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they had a projections that they just weren't hitting and they were just publicly lying and saying they were hitting them, because you would think they would know what they needed in order to run the league. I mean, you have all your player salaries, those don't fluctuate. You have your rent, you have your operating costs. Obviously there's going to be a miscellaneous category, but people know how to do financials in business, and so you would think they have that all mapped out. And how does it run out 2 weeks in, literally 2 weeks in, considering they needed to be saved? And so I don't understand when you have to be able to plan ahead and know, like, okay, we need, unless they just thought they were going to actually crush it that first weekend and they did less than they thought, even though they said they did really well. It doesn't add up.
Yeah. Well, story's yet to be finished.
Yeah.
That's the best way I could put it.
Yeah. So, real quick, and this is going to be, we'll do this one super quick, but what do you think they could have done differently to have greater success? I'll start off. So here's what I think they could have done. 2 things. One, the 8 cities they chose. We talked about this a show a while back. I love half the cities. I hate half the cities. I love that they're in San Antonio because other than the Spurs, there's no pro sports team. That team actually, I think, led in attendance. Orlando I like just because there's no teams there. They have a stadium there already. San Diego, I was on the fence. I like because there's the nostalgia with the Chargers leaving. But let's be real, San Diego's not a football town. They can cry all they want. I hope they're listening to the show, but it's it's not a football town. The Chargers had their own problems with attendance. But I think it was okay because they were able to ride that like, oh, football's back kind of thing. I'm trying to think of all the cities now. Birmingham.
Salt Lake City.
I like Birmingham. Even though it's more of a college town, they can still get it can still get a draw there just because there's no pro teams. I hate Salt Lake City. Thought that was a terrible city. Not Salt Lake City's a terrible city, but just a bad city for a football team. I think they average like 9,000 people a game, which is less than like high school in Texas. So that was a bad city.
And then I don't know where they played, but they were in Arizona, and then they had an Atlanta team in Memphis.
Yeah. Memphis, don't love Atlanta, don't love Arizona. So I think one thing they could have changed is choose. You have to, if you're going to be a developmental league, and that's going to be your plan, and going into, okay, we are not competing with the NFL. We're a developmental league. We're going to make X amount of dollars. This is not an operation where we're going to be NFL, $1 billion corporation. We're going to get by. Our goal is to survive, at least for the first 5 years. We need to make it to 5 years. The way you do that, in my opinion, is you tailor it like other developmental leagues, like minor league baseball, like the G League, and you go to cities that don't have any professional teams or don't have other crap to do. Go to middle of Kansas, rural Nebraska, go to North Carolina out in the sticks, places where people love sports but they don't have teams. Minor league baseball, what makes minor league baseball so great is because they're in these little nothing towns. I don't want to say nothing because that comes across bad, but they're in these little tiny towns where there's not much to do except go watch the ball game, get dollar beers, dollar hot dogs, all the promotional giveaways that are fun. So I think they needed to emulate that more instead of taking the. I know it's a professional league, not minor league, but if they're going to be developmental, they needed to have that approach of like small town. Love us because we're like the family household name. We're not the big Hollywood, big stars, flashing lights. Like, no, we're the regular guys. We're the guys that are just trying to make it. So come support us. So that's one, I think. Two, they need to get more, and I'm emulating this after the LAFC, the soccer team, new here in LA. The ownership group of the LAFC has about 30 to 40 high-profile, high-powerful people. So not only do they have a great financial backing because of all these celebrities, ex-athletes, Will Ferrell's one of the people in that ownership group. So they have good financial backing, but they have essentially free marketing because you have all those influential people talking about the club, promoting it, and those people have millions of followers to do it. So they needed guys like Peyton Manning, who you mentioned, bunch of retired NFL players to go in on this. Like I know they have some. You mentioned Troy Polamalu, and they have some coaches and stuff like that. But they needed more to buy into the actual teams, not the league. Buy into the teams and say, "All right, Peyton Manning, you're the owner of the Birmingham Iron, so you and Papa John's are going to be the sponsors. And you're going to do this. It's going to be fun and blah 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 blah." Like those to me are the things that they missed on that they could have done that would have at least helped the league survive and hit that hopefully 5-year and then expand and grow. I just talked a lot really fast, so I'm sorry.
No apologies needed. I like it. Those are two very good points.
Leisure studies major right here, baby. In action.
I love it, dude. The minor league feel. I love that. I know they had it like the season was played out perfectly from like the week after the Super Bowl to the week before the draft. So like they thought they were going to have like a perfect segue or whatever. I think the season may have been too long, and I think they may have had too many teams. Maybe start out with what they have 8 teams. Maybe start out with 6, maybe even 4. I don't know. I mean, maybe they may have started out too big. They may have spread themselves a little bit too thin. I know like 8 teams doesn't sound like a lot, but clearly it was too much. I think they tried too much a little bit too fast. Start out small, and pick the cities. Don't pick Orlando and San Diego. I know it might seem like a minor thing, but it costs a lot to fly from Orlando to San Diego for all these players, and then to fly them back, and you're flying all over the country. Maybe start out small with 4 teams that are kind of really in a close vicinity where it doesn't cost that much to travel that far.
Yeah.
And build a reputation and kind of get traction before you just start taking off. And I don't know.
Take a page out of like old professional wrestling before it became the WWE, where it was regional. And so
have territories.
People in that region knew their territory. They fell in love with it, and then once they combined regions, I mean that's how the NFL started. It was the NFL and the AFL. Yeah, you can't. I get what you're saying. And nowadays, obviously, travel is cheaper and easier than it used to be, but still, there's that lag time. There's that disconnect. I mean, we found it ourselves with Sports El Dente that there was just that we need to build community and really get involved with the teams and the fans of the teams we're covering. And if we're trying to cover all this ground, we can't do that. And so being a new startup league, I think you hit the nail on the head. They need to find that region where they could just really hunker down and really build that community and that connection.
Yeah.
So XFL, if you're listening, Oliver Luck, take notes.
Right? Exactly. And if they truly want to be a development league, then they need to have these teams affiliated with pro teams already. I know the NFLPA, all that stuff. So if they're not interested, then obviously it can't happen. But don't just start a league and be like, oh, we're developmental. Hey, NFL, look at us. Have talks with the NFL. Start out with the NFL, and then a sprouter team that is a Rams feeder, sprouter team, and they play in Anaheim, or they play in San Diego, or they play in San Jose or something like that, and then sprouter team for the Patriots, and they play in they actually play in Boston, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Sprout actual teams and feed those guys into those teams and have them affiliated a little bit with the NFL, instead of just starting a brand new league and then hopefully one day you could be a developmental league. But I think, because these minor, like baseball, the Angels have a feeder team. They have minor league teams. They have affiliates. Be affiliated with the NFL in some way, shape, or form before you get going and kind of start that way. I don't know. Again, just an idea. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, and that was the big roadblock. But to your point, they should have done that before even starting the league to begin with. That should have been. And if it was never going to happen, then either you roll with the league and make it not a developmental league, or you wait until that happens and then start the league. So I think they just rushed into it.
Yeah.
Clearly, since it's over 8 weeks in.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. I think it had a good thing going, so it's kind of a bummer. But
It is.
Well, I mean, the XFL's stoked because now they don't have competition.
Yeah. Well, I'm still, like I said earlier, I'm kind of excited just to see what it's like.
Yeah, I know. I'm curious if it'll be similar to the AAF product or if it's still going to have that WWE Pro Wrestling kind of flair to it.
I don't know. I hope not. I mean, I think the WWE is great at marketing and they're great at promotion. So if they can take that idea and those principles and apply it to football and actually have it be football related, not this flamboyant, out of this world, like they did with the original XFL, I think they'll do fairly well just because of how well the WWE is ran on a marketing and promotion standpoint.
Yeah, we'll see. But they did another thing that, we'll see if it works, but they basically put all their teams in large markets. I mean, they got Dallas, Houston, LA, New York, St. Louis, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and DC. So they're...
Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like it. I mean...
You're not going to steal fans away from the NFL, and that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're going up against NFL fan bases, which it's just not going to work.
Yeah, even though it's in the off season, it's still...
Yeah, teams are at this point for an expansion league like that. Fans are still more interested in looking into their team. So if you're New York, the Jets and the Giants fans are more interested in the draft, and who their teams are going to take to get better and all that than they are in this brand new league. They're not going to watch your games. They're so more interested in the NFL. They care about the draft more than your games.
Yeah, exactly. And we're in LA. This podcast is an LA football podcast, but we have the Rams, Chargers, Bruins, and Trojans, and now we're going to have an XFL team too.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I mean,
it'll become part of the show.
They could definitely become part of the show, but I don't think that's what people are going to be tuning in to listen for.
No. So
I think. But anyway, I don't like that they went to those particular cities.
Should have gone the small city route, hometown feel. So, all right. Well, speaking of LA football, let's get on to the last part of our show. We're finishing, or not finishing. We have one more piece of it, but we're continuing on with our bracket series of LA football teams. So this week we're doing the pro teams, meaning the Chargers and Rams. So we're trying to find the greatest professional Los Angeles team of all time. Obviously, some of these teams played in St. Louis for the Rams and played in San Diego for the Chargers, but we just clumped them all together under the LA moniker. So don't be listening and think we don't know what we're talking about. I think only 2 of the teams out of the 8 actually are played in LA. No, maybe more than that because the Rams had some years in Anaheim and LA as well before. So I'll just read off our 1 through 8 and then we'll get into it. Or do you want to go 8, break it down, 7, break it down? How do you want to do it?
I mean, we could just announce the 1-8 matchup, talk about it.
Okay.
2-7, however we did it last time.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what we did last time. That sounds good to me. So the 1-8 matchup with the 8 seed, we chose, so we, just so everyone knows, me and the coach chose 1 through 8, and then after that we each have our own who goes on and who wins. So the 8 seed is the 1994 Chargers team. So this was the team that lost in Super Bowl 29. They were not a very, how do I put this, star-studded team. Obviously a good team. I mean, you don't make the Super Bowl if you're not a good team. But it wasn't. They finished first in the AFC West. They went 11-5 overall. They beat the Dolphins in the divisional round, and they beat the Steelers in the AFC Championship round, and then they got beat pretty bad by the Niners in Super Bowl 29. But yeah, a team we obviously I think had to put in there when you look at Chargers history. It's the only Chargers team to even play in a Super Bowl, so obviously it has to be on the list. But yeah, I'm trying to kind of remember. I don't know. You can jump in too, but the roster, when you look at it, you're like, out of all the Chargers teams in history, I am really surprised that's the team that went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, me too. I mean, outside of Junior Seau, it's really kind of a hodgepodge of names. I mean, Stan Humphries was the quarterback. Natrone Means was the running back, even though Means had a decent year. He went to a Pro Bowl. One name that I recognize was Eric Bieniemy. He's, the current offensive coordinator. He was a backup running back there. But yeah. Other than just wasn't kind of like the 72 Dolphins, that no-name team. I think that 72 Dolphins team had no Pro Bowlers or something. But yeah, just not a lot of big names on this team other than Junior Seau.
Yeah, I'm kind of Darian Gordon, Rodney Harrison. There's another big name on there. Yeah, I mean, that's about it.
Yeah, and this team was definitely an anomaly because they're bookended. I mean, usually when a team goes to the Super Bowl, they have some solid years around them. They've been to the playoffs. They've have some experience. But the year before that, they went 8-8, and the year after that, they went 9-7. It seems like it was just a strike of lightning to where this team was even a contender of anything, and it seemed to be like a perfect storm. So a weird deal. Well,
and that perfectly encapsulates kind of what we're saying, that it's not star-studded. It was just like they hit that. In sports in general, everything's about momentum, and when you find your stride at the right time, and they had that year where everything worked. Maybe injuries were good, and good for them, made the Super Bowl. So yeah, that's our 8 seed, the 94 Chargers, going up against the 1 seed, the 1999 St. Louis Rams. You want to start with them, chatting about them?
Yeah, this was another kind of a special team. The team going into it had Trent Green as their starter, who went down in training camp, and then the whole story of Kurt Warner, everybody knows that. Yeah. Came in and was their savior, and they went through the season and with Marshall Faulk and Torrey Holt and Isaac Bruce, and they had that defense, and yeah. So that 99 team was kind of a surprise of its own, just because they rolled with an unknown quarterback who ended up being the league MVP that year.
Yeah, finished 13-3, first in the NFC West. Kurt Warner was the MVP. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl that year against the Titans. He was the Super Bowl MVP. Dick Vermeil was the Coach of the Year. Marshall Faulk was the Offensive Player of the Year. So, kind of the opposite of what we were saying about the Chargers, who kind of found that lightning in a bottle, but not a star-studded team. This was a pretty star-studded Rams squad, or at least it became that way as the season progressed. So, winning the Super Bowl, obviously very worthy. We talk about Super Bowls. I just want to bring this up. I remember we had an episode where we talked about the greatest Super Bowls, and this Super Bowl, 34, I believe it was, is always heralded as like one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time. When, in my opinion, it was just one of the greatest finishes of all time. But it was kind of a boring Super Bowl.
No, I totally agree. Yeah, when people bring it up as one of the greatest Super Bowls, they think of that one play, the tackle at the 1 yard line. Yeah, I agree. You put it perfectly. It's one of the greatest endings to the Super Bowl. But yeah, I wouldn't consider it an all-time Super Bowl great.
Yeah, it was, just kind of boring. Not a very, very good Super Bowl. I just always laugh when people tout it as like a top 5. I'm like, yeah, I think there were quite a few better than it. That's just me. But anyway, That's our 1 seed. So, moving on to the 4-5 matchup. Let's go with our 5 seed, who we have the 1980 Chargers. This team is, in its own right, remarkable because they are I can't remember how many teams, but they had 3 receivers all receive over 1,000 yards. Kellen Winslow, John Jefferson, and Charlie Joyner all had over 1,000 yards receiving. Dan Fouts was the quarterback, obviously. He threw for, I think, 4,800 yards or so. Coach Correll, that was kind of the infamous Air Correll offense. So solid squad, and that's pretty, I think, impressive. Not even like a good enough word when you have 3 receivers over 1,000 yards.
Yeah, even in today's NFL, as
Yeah.
air raid and pass happy as it is, that would be impressive today. And to do it in 1980 is almost mind-boggling to even think about that. I mean, I feel like people's brains just exploded back then when they knew that one team had 3 guys over 1,000 yards through the air. But yeah, definitely, this team was definitely ahead of their time. Eric Coria, like you said, Dan Fouts, and with those 3 guys, man, yeah, this team was way ahead of its time and impressive to say the least. Probably should have been to the Super Bowl. Lost to a great Raiders team in the division in the AFC Championship, but yeah, one of the all-time greatest Chargers teams.
Yep, exactly. And I don't know, I don't think we said their record. They went 11
13-3, correct?
I think
Oh, 11-5.
11 and
You're right.
5,
11,
but
11 and
first in their
5.
division, 11 and 5. Won the divisional round against the Bills, lost in the AFC Championship to the Raiders. So 1 game away from the Super Bowl. Solid team. Just to put a little bit of perspective on that offense, and Dan Fouts, who I don't know if a lot of people know Dan Fouts, because I know he's not very talked about. Very underrated, in my opinion, quarterback. 2-time All-Pro, I believe. A lot of Pro Bowls. But just to kind of put into perspective how actually good he was. So who, in your opinion, is – well, okay, we can debate, but just what's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time that's retired?
Dan Marino.
Okay, and then besides Dan Marino?
Peyton Manning.
Okay, I'm Joe Montana. I'm getting that.
Okay. I don't know what you're trying to get to.
A lot of people would probably say Joe Montana is arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. Most of people look to his Super Bowls when they look at that. And again, we talk about it all the time. You can't look at strictly stats. What do you think is, and sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, the most yards Montana ever threw for in a season?
I would probably say he never threw for over 3,500.
Okay, you're close. His most he ever threw for was 3,900. He threw for 3,900 twice. So he never threw for over 4,000. So just put that in perspective. Dan Fouts in those 3 years from 79 to 81 threw for 4,000, 4,700, and 4,800. Pretty impressive for a guy that doesn't get talked about hardly at all. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just without the Super Bowl rings, man, it's hard to get talked about.
Exactly, because his career, he actually threw for 3,000 more total yards than Montana, but no Super Bowls. Montana has 4, 5.
Yeah,
something like that.
4 or 5.
But they played like the same era almost.
Yeah, I mean, Montana was kind of I guess 70s and 80s. I think
Montana
Fouts more 80s.
Yeah, it's Fouts started before Montana, and Montana finished after Fouts, but their like prime was pretty much similar.
Yeah, and the offensive coordinator, Joe Gibbs, who obviously went on to win a Super Bowl or 2 with the Redskins. He was the offensive coordinator back then for the old Chargers. That's a pretty impressive offense. So no wonder they had three 1,000-yard receivers.
So there you go. So they're playing the 4 seed, another Chargers team, the 06 Chargers squad. This is probably arguably one of the most disappointing teams, at least in LA, whatever Chargers history we'll say. Just considering the regular season they had, the amount of firepower they had, the talent they had, and then just unable to put it together in the playoffs.
Yeah, man. This team, I believe Phillip Rivers had taken over by now. They had LT. He was in his prime. I think he had, what did he have? He had like almost 2,000. Yeah, he had over 1,800 yards, 28 touchdowns. That was the year he broke that record. They had Lorenzo Neal as a fullback, who's a Hall of Famer. Michael Turner was the backup, who went on to have a pretty successful starting career with the Falcons. Yeah, man, 06, 14-2 regular season.
Yeah.
It's impressive. Has it been done since? I guess the 17 Patriots or the 07 Patriots. Sorry. But yeah, man, 14-2 to win your division like that, and they started out 4-2, so they rambled out. What is that? 10 straight wins.
Yeah.
But yeah, they came out and lost at home to the eventual. Did the Patriots win that year, or was that the Colts year?
Colts.
I feel like that was the year the Colts won.
Colts 106. I always it's always confusing because it's like 06 into 07, 05 into 06. I remember it was the
Right.
06 Colts, but I can't remember if that was. Yeah, I think that was the year the Colts won.
But anyway, yeah, I mean they had home field advantage throughout the playoffs, and they lose the first game to the Patriots, who, came in and they had that game won. If you remember, they intercepted a pass that would have, I think, essentially sealed the game, and the guy was trying to do too much, ended up fumbling it on the interception return, giving it back to the Patriots, who ended up winning the game. And it just such a heart-wrenching, gut-wrenching thing, and especially for the guy. I mean, I know everybody talks some crap on Rivers, but he's a respectable guy. He's a competitor. He's really good at what he does, and especially with Danny Tomlinson. I know we met him last year at Chargers training camp. He's a pretty nice guy, and his Hall of Fame speech was second to almost none.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was very hard to root against that team, and to see him fall to someone like the Patriots, it just kind of sucks.
Yeah, you couldn't said it better. Wasn't there like a Nate Kading missed field goal or something in that game too that was like instrumental? I can't remember for sure.
That I don't remember. I just remember the interception fumble.
But that team was you said it, 14-2. LT won MVP and Offensive Player of the Year. Talented.
Yeah.
Not even win a playoff game. Disappointing. So that's why they're the 4 seed. I mean, you just.
Yeah, and we need to mention. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit more, but just quickly, I mean, the defense. I mean, that was Sean Merriman.
Yeah.
He had probably the best year of his career. Donnie Edwards, who I remember him when he was a Chief. He was a great linebacker. So the defense too was a great team.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you weren't surprised since old Marty Schottenheimer.
Yeah, Marty Ball, man.
Just can't win in the playoffs.
You can't do it.
You saw that a lot in the 90s.
That ended up being his last year, correct? With the Chargers.
Yep, that was his last year.
Yeah, unfortunately, but yeah, old Marty Ball.
Old Marty Ball. So, all right, then we go to our 3-6 matchup, and we have our most recent teams. We didn't plan it for this to be the matchup in the first round, but it just worked out. We'll keep this brief just because it just happened. We have the 6 seed is the 2018 Chargers, and the 3 seed is the 2018 Rams. So both teams had a lot of success. Rams won the division, obviously go to the Super Bowl, lose to the Patriots. Had a kind of a not record-breaking, but had a very historical offense, very good offense. Should have been better defense. Had the defense played as the talent on the roster was, I think they would be Super Bowl champions today. Not that you can blame the defense for that Super Bowl, but you get what I'm getting at. The defense overall throughout the season was a little lackluster, but still good. Yeah. Chargers started off 0-2, losing to the Rams, to the Chiefs, and then ended up finishing very respectable. They were technically tied with the Chiefs record-wise, right? But the Chiefs had the tiebreaker.
Yeah, they each went 11-5. I'm sorry, 12-4. They both went 12-4. But yeah, the Chiefs had the tiebreaker.
Yeah. Okay. So finished second in the division, and then ended up losing the divisional round to the Patriots. But very good season. Anthony Lynn, I think, has done a good job there. Good coach. So you have the two, not young coaches, but young. Well, Sean McVay's young, but Anthony Lynn is not. But they're both second-year coaches. So two up-and-coming head coaches and fun teams. So and I don't need to say much more about that. I don't really want to add anything.
Yeah, no, you pretty much said everything that needed to be said. Two very good teams and two deserving teams.
Yep, so that's the 3-6 matchup. Then moving on to the 2-7 matchup, we have the 7 seed is the 85 Rams. You want to talk about this team? It's kind of our old buddy Brock.
Yeah, it was
or at least tell the story of Brock. Yeah.
Yeah, it was fun learning about this team, the 85 Rams, who ended up losing. They went 11-5. They lost to the eventual Super Bowl champion Chicago Bears, one of the greatest teams of all time. But yeah, Brock Dieter was their quarterback. Some of you are probably nodding your head and saying, yeah, I remember Dieter, and you probably already know the story. But Brock Dieter made his career in outside of the NFL. He was very well known in the Canadian Football League and bounced around there for a little bit. And he played 1 year with the Chargers. With the Rams. He was a 33-year-old rookie, I believe. And in his 1 year in the NFL, led the team to the 11-5 record, lost to one of the greatest defenses of all time in the conference championship. So one game away from the Super Bowl for the old rookie, Brock Dieter. Pretty cool story.
Yeah, I led you astray. We knew this before, but it's Dieter Brock, not Brock Dieter.
My bad.
Yeah, Dieter. Yeah, I think I said it first by mistake. So, yeah, I just think that's so cool. His nickname was like the old rookie. 33 years old. I think his stats were nothing glamorous or nothing to like really write home about. But hey, led the team 11-5, won the division, and we're one game away from the Super Bowl. So, just a fun story. But overall, it was a solid team. So we didn't put him in just because of old my man Dieter. But man, I want a Dieter Brock jersey so bad. But it has to say Dieter Brock. It can't just say Brock.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's gotta. That would definitely be one to add to the collection. And we should mention that a little known running back by the name of Eric Dickerson was kind of a big part of that team.
He was the staple of the team. Yeah, I don't think as much as I like the D's to my B's, I don't think Dieter Brock was really running the show there.
Yeah, Dickerson Eric, one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah, not D to the B, but D to the E.
Oh boy.
Okay, well they face off against the 2 seed, the 0-1 Rams, greatest show on turf. We had some debate whether to put them at 1 and the 99 Rams at 2. If you listened to the show last or 2 shows ago when we did our college breakdown, we had the same kind of debate with the 0-4 and the 0-5 SC Trojans, 0-4 and 0-5, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Kind of just we think the later team was maybe a little better, but they didn't win the Super Bowl, so it's hard to put them in that higher seed when they didn't actually win the whole thing. So we kind of mentioned it with the 99 team, but Torrey Holt, Isaac Bruce, Marshall Faulk, Kurt Warner put up at the time. I think they shattered all the records for offensive accolades. I'm pretty sure they were, most passing or most offensive yards, most offensive points, all those things. They broke all the records, have since been broken, but yeah. So, had to put them at 2 seed. So, we'll start with you, unless, did you want to say anything else about them?
No, there's not. I mean, they're not that different from the 99 Rams. That just, one of those great debates.
Yep, exactly. So, then, why don't, I'll let you start with do your 4-5 match, or just do your 1-8 matchup.
Okay, 1-8 matchup. 1-8 doesn't have to be talked about a lot. It's kind of a simple one. I mean, the 94 Chargers made it almost strictly because they were in the Super Bowl, and how could you leave a Super Bowl team off of there, especially the only one in Chargers history? 99, it wouldn't even be a game. 99 Rams would easily cakewalk that game.
Yeah, I have the same. 99 Rams, don't need to add anything to that. So they're who they would face between the 4 seed, but the 06 Chargers or the 80 Chargers. This should be an easy one. I kind of actually went back and forth with it. Just that something about the 80 team, Dan Fouts, 3 receivers over 1,000 yards, Eric Correll. I liked it, but not enough to go over that 06 team. That 06 team, as disappointing as the finish was, that team was so good. That team should have won the Super Bowl that year.
Oh, yeah, for sure. 100% agree. I had 06. It wasn't that hard for me. I have fond memories of that 06 team. I don't know why. I mean, I've always been a Chiefs fan. I don't know why I like that team so much. I think I just really liked LT.
I think everyone did. Everyone liked LT. How could you not?
Yeah.
That scene after he breaks the record and like all his teammates pick him up.
Lift him up and he's pointing to him. And,
yeah. So great. It's like I remember the Titans scene or something.
Right? Yeah, something from a movie.
Yeah. It was hard for me just because something about that 80s Chargers intrigued me, but in reality it wasn't hard. Like, it's an obvious. This next one was harder. We'll get to that in a second, though. Okay. Yeah. So the 3-6 matchup, 18 Rams, 18 Chargers. I'll let you start.
It was hard. I mean, I really like that Chargers team. I think they, if they hadn't been in the division with the Chiefs, I mean, this team, it takes that division, and they were, I mean, honestly, a play away from not taking the division. That Mahomes to Tyreek Hill play against the Ravens pretty much sealed the deal there. But having said all that, as much as I do like that 2018 Chargers team, I had to go with the 2018 Rams. you make it to a Super Bowl, especially against the NFC. It was completely loaded. The Saints was even though that game ended in all that controversy. At the end of the day, the Rams still won that game.
Yep.
Played in the Super Bowl. Great. They have a great coach. They have a formidable quarterback, Jared Goff. I mean, he's not a world beater, but he's serviceable. He's a very good quarterback. I wouldn't call him a great quarterback, but he's very good. Todd Gurley, and then obviously Aaron Donald, who I think is he's the best player in the NFL right now. He's not the MVP just because it's so hard to give an MVP award to someone who's not a quarterback. But yeah, Aaron Donald, any defense that guy's on, even though statistically this team wasn't great defensively. Aaron Donald, to me, I love him so much. I think he's one of the best to ever play the game. So I had the 18 Rams taking this one.
Yep. It was tough for me as well. It's also just 'cause it's so recent. So there's we know so much more about these teams because we broke them down all year. Top to bottom, I love both these rosters. I think they have talent at every single position. Where the Rams separate themselves is at the offensive line, and the Chargers have other positions that they have a little more strength in, but I think overall it's very even, whereas that offensive line I think was quite a bit better on the Rams side, and then obviously just them going to the Super Bowl helps, but it's close. I had to do Rams as well, 18 Rams. So, alrighty, moving on. Last matchup, the 0-1 Rams as a 2 seed against the 85 Rams. I love Dieter Brock, my dog, but this was pretty easy.
Yeah, kind of like the 1-8 matchup, kind of a formality for these teams to even play each other. 85 Rams, great story, Dieter and all that. Eric Dickerson, great running back, but the 0-1 Rams team, one of the greatest to ever not win a Super Bowl.
Yep, so let's just stay right there then. So we both have the same. We have all of our matchups are the same. So the 0-1 Rams against the 18 Rams. I'll let you start.
All right, so 0-1 and 18, two Rams teams. Man, I actually went back and forth on this one quite a bit. Both Super Bowl runners-up. Really good players on both sides of the ball for both teams, but I had to go 2001 Rams. I think with that O-line, they had Orlando Pace on that team, who's now in the Hall of Fame, and with those receivers and just that offense. It would have, and the biggest bugaboo for to steal one of your phrases for that 18 Rams, that was that secondary. I mean, Aqib Talib, Marcus Peters, and they kind of struggled all year, and I don't think they would have slowed down Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt. They wouldn't have stopped Marshall Faulk. And then that defense is kind of underrated too, just because it gets overshadowed by that offense. I mean, London Fletcher, Dexter McCleon was at the top of his game. Aeneas Williams, future Hall of Famer. Grant Wistrom was a young buck back then. That team was a formidable team on both sides of the ball. So I think there's just too much for that 2018 Rams to withhold. So I have the 0-1 Rams advancing.
Yep, you hit every point. I think the only other thing I would add is that if you compare the two, you have Mike Martz against Sean McVay, who I don't think a lot of people give Mike Martz a lot of credit, just kind of how I wouldn't say flamed out, but he started off very hot and then became tepid as his coaching tenure went on. But when he became coach, took over for Dick Vermeil, who retired, he was considered one of the greatest offensive minds in the NFL. That was his MO, was offense, hence the greatest show on turf. And that's kind of how Sean McVay is viewed currently, as a great new up-and-coming offensive mind. This was the 0-1 was Mark Martz's second season. Last year was Sean McVay's second season. So there's a lot of similarities there. At the time, I would still, even though people recency, and I've even talked about my love for McVay, at the time I still would give the nod to Martz at that time, just of what he did, had a little more experience. But, I mean, they both lost Super Bowl to the same team. So, but yes, all that being said, I agree with you. The 0-1 Rams, I give the nod just slightly. But it's closer than many would probably think.
Yeah, that's true. I kind of forgot about Mike Martz, and he was kind of the hot new thing back then.
Yeah,
because he only spent a couple seasons as the offensive coordinator before he got the job.
Yeah,
I mean, I know
Yeah, he was just a few under Vermeil and then took over once Vermeil retired.
Yeah,
And then
you know what? This there's probably a lot more to talk about. This might even be a whole other podcast, but the similarities between the 18 and 01 Rams, man, it's almost eerie.
it's very because it's offensive loaded, but had formidable and opportunistic, the word you like to use, defenses. So, and both losing to the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
And Tom Brady.
Yep, and Tom, yeah,
which is crazy
there's
to think about.
even more similarity, and just the coaching styles, and so a lot of similarities, but yeah,
Interesting.
not the 01. All right, so the 99 Rams and the 06 Chargers. This actually was probably the most difficult for me because we talk about all the time. It's hard to choose against a Super Bowl winning team, that being the 99 Rams. But strictly based on regular season, based on statistical accolades, that 06 Charger team is a better team, I think. I still couldn't put them past that just because they did nothing in the playoffs, and especially with who their coach was. Marty Schottenheimer, Marty Ball, does a lot of good things. The guy can't win in the playoffs. So if I'm taking a Super Bowl game and it's Chargers Rams and it's Dick Vermeil, it's Marty Schottenheimer, I'm taking the 99 Rams and Dick Vermeil. But if it's a Week 9 game, give me that 06 Chargers team and LT.
Yeah. No, very difficult for me as well. Had the same thought. I mean, how do you choose against the Super Bowl team? But I did.
Woo!
I went with the 06 Chargers.
I wanted to be bold. I couldn't do it, though. I love that you did.
Yeah, man, it was difficult because I mean that was my argument to have them as a 1 seed just because they did win a Super Bowl. But man, that 06 Charger team was so much fun to watch. And yeah, I know they literally fumbled in the playoffs and didn't get the job done, and even though they had all the momentum and all that stuff. But yeah, I think I have a great respect and great love for both Vermeil and Marty Schottenheimer for probably really obvious reasons. I mean, they both coached for the Chiefs for a number of years, and but man, I love me some Marty. You know, I do love Marty Ball, and I love LaDainian Tomlinson, and Phillip Rivers was a much younger gunslinger back then, and I think with that old line that the Rams had, or the 06 Chargers had, I just don't think the 99 Rams. I think this game is a shootout. Obviously, they're going to light up the scoreboard. But yeah, I think in the end, I think LT. I think the 06 Chargers kind of use that running game a little bit more to their advantage. I think they run some clock, keep the ball out of Warner and the greatest show on turf. I think they keep the ball out of their hands. So the 06 Chargers lean more on the running game and run some clock and really are able to kind of steal one, even though, like you said, they are the better team. So yeah, 06.
All right, I like it. I mean, I wanted to take him. Like I said, if his regular season, I would take them. Just something about Marty Ball in the playoffs in a 1-game elimination game. I've seen that guy lose too many times. I couldn't do it. I
feel you.
Great. Well, then we get to our championship of LA football teams. So I have the 99 Rams facing against the O Rams. The coach has the 06 Chargers facing against the 01 Rams. So then this will make I was a little worried with my decision because I didn't know if I'd get flack from you, but seeing how what your pick just did, it solidifies mine. So I took the 01 Rams over the 99 Rams, even though the 99 Rams won, the 01 Rams did not win. Overall, that team was just better. We talked about it with the 94 Chargers, how that was the team that just kind of, they obviously didn't win the Super Bowl. There was just something special about that team that they didn't necessarily have the talent, but they got them to the Super Bowl. And the 01 Rams faced that against the Patriots. There's just that team that we've seen the dominance they've gone on since, but that was like the start of a dynasty. They just had that spark, and the Rams happened to get the bad end of it. But overall, I think that team is just one of the greatest teams in NFL history. Probably. Before I make this statement, I need to look into it more, but I'll just say arguably the greatest team to not win a Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah, I would. Yeah, they're right up there with that 97 or 98 Vikings team and the 07 Patriots team. Yeah, they're right up there with them. Man, this This is tough. I mean,
What?
I,
Yeah,
oh,
I'm interested who you did because since you have two teams that aren't winners, they would have made it even more difficult, I think.
oh, for sure. Just the fact. I mean, you look at the coaching staff. I mean, for the Chargers, obviously Marty Schottenheimer, we mentioned him, but Wade Phillips, your guy, was the defensive coordinator
Yeah,
back then,
yeah.
running that 3-4. And then for the Rams, they had Lovie Smith, who went on to be a Super Bowl head coach. He didn't win one, but he was involved in one.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh, man, I mean, talk about and then just such a great matchup. Kurt Warner slinging it to his guys, and then Phillip Rivers slinging it and handing off to his guys, and
That game would be
I mean,
so good.
oh my gosh, I can't even
And
imagine
it sucks
what
that
that would look like.
it sucks that it's like on the cusp of being could have been a reality because there's only 5 years in between. Like it's not like
Right.
I'd love to see the 85 Bears play the 2015 Broncos just because those defenses were so elite, blah blah. But like this was a 5-year difference. Like there was a small window where it could happen. Sorry, I cut you off. Continue on.
No, dude, no, you're perfectly fine. Man, I'm almost deciding right now, but no, I went with you. 2001 Rams. I think they just have a little bit more to them, a little bit more experience. Mike Martz, and yeah, it's hard to pick a Marty Schottenheimer led team to actually win a championship. It really truly is.
Hasn't been done.
It hasn't been done, and unfortunately never will be done.
Yeah.
But and you look at the receivers. I mean, Keenan McCardell was on that Chargers team, but he was past his prime. He was, in his mid-30s at that point. Didn't really have a great statistical year. He's more just a name and just a veteran presence. But you look at that 01 Rams team with their receivers, Bruce and Holt. They were both in their prime.
Yeah.
Both went over 1,000 yards.
Ricky Prohl
Marshall
was on
Faulk
that
was
team
in
too,
his
right?
prime. Just the caliber of talent I think on the Rams team and on the sideline. Even though I really do respect Wade Phillips and I know you love that guy. Man, yeah. 2001 St. Louis Rams barely edging out the 2006 San Diego Chargers, and what would have been one of the greatest Super Bowls of all time had that actually happened.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I hope just for our sake, being here in LA, that a Rams Chargers Super Bowl does happen at some point. I think
And it's not that far fetched. Like it could happen.
It could have happened
soon.
last year. Yeah, I mean,
it was a couple games away from happening last year.
So, it'd be great. It'd be cool for the city. It'd be better for the Chargers in a sense. I think it would help their brand because they're still kind of almost the no-name team here, whereas the Rams have support from years past, whereas Chargers don't really. So they're trying to garner that. So an all LA Super Bowl would kind of those fair weather fans would be like, I could get behind this Chargers team because they're instead of bandwagoning with the Rams. But I digress. That's for another conversation. So there you have it. The Believe in LA football bracket, pro bracket, features one team from St. Louis, one from San Diego, but now they're in LA. So our greatest LA football pro team of all time is the 01 Rams. We're in unison on that. I like it.
I love it, dude. I like doing this. I'm looking forward to more stuff like this.
Well, we're doing high school next. It's going to be interesting breaking these down. We're going to have to get our film, get the film out, start researching. So we might do that. We won't do it on our next episode, our Saturday episode, but we might do it next Tuesday or the following Saturday. Just give us a little time to prep on that. So, well, Coach, anything else to add before we sign off?
Just thanks for everybody who keeps supporting us and our loyal delegates out there, and I'm looking for this thing just keeps growing, and I'm so thankful to be on this Believe Podcast Network. They do some really cool things, just the way they market their product and the way they believe, no pun intended, but truly the way they believe in their guys and their shows, and the faith they have in them to kind of let them do their own thing, and the way they back them up, and I'm so appreciative of this opportunity, and I'm really looking forward to a long and lasting relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't have said better. If you haven't checked out the Believe Podcast Network yet, make sure to head over. There's a lot of awesome shows. Like we're just stoked to be on the network, just with guys like Ryan Leaf, Ryan Hollins does basketball, Chris Penrose does USC, Corey Paz with UCLA. just to name a few. There's ex-athletes. There's people in Hollywood. You look on there and it's kind of like, oh wow, these are some big name people. So and then you have the old Coach and the Don on there, rounding it out. So we're stoked. We're actually going to be doing some collab episodes with some of the other hosts. We're going to have some draft guys on. I think we're going to try to get Tony Pauline or Chris Tripodi on, who do the draft on there. So they have great insight since we're in draft season. We're going to chat with Ryan Leaf here probably soon. The Charity Stripe podcast is another fun one with those guys. We're going to collab on something. So a lot of fun stuff in the pipeline for the LA Football Podcast. So we're stoked. Thanks for following us. Make sure to, give us a rating. Helps us out if you don't mind on iTunes. Hit that 5 stars, preferably not the 1 star. Do the 5. It's a little better for us. And make sure to become a delegate of the become an Al Dente delegate. It's gonna take me a little while to say that now that it's new.
Yeah, no, I get you. No, it's going to take a little bit to get, but just say it as like your mantra when you're doing yoga or when you're meditating or when you're falling asleep. Just instead of counting sheep, just al dente delegates, al dente delegates.
Because all the yoga I do, all that hot yoga.
Speaking of which, there's a great yoga podcast on the Believe Network.
There you go. There is. I haven't listened to it yet, but now I'm interested. Okay, so this Sunday, I mean, you in our hot yoga class, we'll listen to it on the way.
Okay, and one last plug for the network. I really do enjoy the 5-minute talk show, or I believe that's what it's called. The 5-minute talk show with Phil Iazetta. Man, that show is a fun listen. Just the caliber of names he has on there. I think my favorite episode so far that I've listened to is the one with Bill Engvall. I love Bill Engvall. He's one of my favorite stand-up comedians. He was part of that Blue Collar Comedy Tour, which was, huge back in the day. That's really fun to listen to.
Yeah, there's
just so many shows on this network that really all of them are great.
Yeah, I could, and then before we wrap up, did you see the latest one that they just added? So if you don't know the history of the Believe Network, it's brand new. So we're all in this together. We're kind of like building this product. We're, adding podcasts to the show. So it's a lot of cool stuff. But Ted Sobel, who has just been huge in media and has done tons of sports media. I'm sure many out there listening have heard the name, but he's on the network now. Touching Greatness podcast. I saw it the other day, and I was like blown away. I'm like, no way, Ted Sobel, that's great. So a lot of cool stuff. So check out Believe. Subscribe to the LA and Football Podcast. We're your hosts, the Coach and the Don. Make sure to check out sportsaldente.com as well. Use the promo code, the Coach and the Don, and make sure to become an Al Dente delegate.